I spent 10 weeks eating mostly real food, no UPFs, fasting regularly, everything tracked. Then day 69, I ate normally, roast dinner, trifle, mince pies, chocolate digestives, like I used to every weekend. Except this time, my body didn't accept it. I'm Neil, this is day 70 of my reset, and what happened next told me more about metabolic change than 10 weeks of clean data ever could. In the next 12-15 minutes, the full food log from both days, the inflammation that showed up by morning, brain fog so thick I couldn't hold a conversation, and the one thing that confirms your body has actually changed at a cellular level, not just in your head. Before I get into what happened to me specifically, let me explain why it happened. Because without the science bit, the story is just a cautionary tale about trifle. With it, it's actually quite useful. There are two things going on here, two separate mechanisms, both kicking in at once, which is why the reaction was so noticeable. Dr. Andy Chan talks about this. Harvard Mass General, 400 plus papers. His work on ultra-processed food gets into the engineering of it all, not just the ingredients, but the intent behind the ingredients. Here's what he explains. UPF, ultra-processed foods, isn't just food with extra stuff in it. It's food specifically designed to hit a point, a calibrated combination of sugar, fat and salt, where your brain's satiety signals stop working properly. Not malfunction exactly, more like they get bypassed. Your brain gets the dopamine hit before the stomach sends the "I'm full" signal. By the time fullness arrives, you've already eaten 500-600 calories more than you actually needed. There's a landmark study by Kevin Hall, RCT, referenced by Professor Brian Elbel, where participants eating matched ultra-processed meals unintentionally consumed around 500 extra calories per day compared to people eating the same nutritional profile from whole foods. Same macro on paper, different food engineering. 500 calories difference every single day. That's not willpower failure. That's the product doing exactly what it was designed to do. Think of it like this. Real food is handmade furniture, solid oak table, dovetail joints, weighs a ton, built to last 100 years. UPF is flat packed from a warehouse, MDF with a wood effect sticker, an Allen key assembly, one wobbly leg falls apart in 18 months. Cheap, convenient and looks okay in the photos. But here's the thing, your body knows that your brain sometimes forget. It's trying to build cells, hormones, neurotransmitters from those ingredients. It's trying to construct something structural from MDF, and MDF has limits, which is fine occasionally. It's not fine if it's 50-60% of what you're eating every day. This matters whether you've had a diagnosis or not, by the way. The bliss point mechanism isn't a condition you develop. It's working on everyone, all the time. Every time you open a packet, understanding how it works is useful way before a GP visit. This is where it gets personal, because this is what I didn't fully understand until day 70. 10 weeks of real food, fasting regularly, no UPFs. What actually happened in that time biologically? Fat adaptation is like learning to drive a manual car. Week 1, stalling at every roundabout, grinding gears, sweating at traffic lights, humiliating. By week 4, you're consciously thinking through each gear change. Month 3, you don't think, you just drive. Your foot knows where the clutch is. Your hand shifts without looking. That's what 10 weeks does, metabolically. You're not just losing weight, you're rebuilding which fuel systems your body prefers. You're retraining the gearbox. Month 1 is rough, the adaptation period. By month 2, it's feeling easier. Energy is more consistent. By month 3, the system runs differently. Fat burning isn't an emergency backup anymore. It's the default setting. The other way I think about it, your house has mains gas for the boiler. Easy, instant heat, that's glucose. It works fine. But there's also a wood burner in the corner you've never really touched. That's fat burning, ketones. 10 weeks of regular fasting, you've been lighting that wood burner. Day 1, it's smoked and spluttered. Week 4, it's going consistently. By week 10, it's roaring. The house is warmer than it's been in years. And there's a forest of logs in the garden, that's body fat, that was always there. When I went back to roast dinners and trifle on day 69. Here's what happened metabolically. I slammed a massive glucose load into my system that had spent 10 weeks preferring fat. The wood burner was running beautifully. I suddenly tried to switch it back to mains gas. Not just switch, I flooded it. 3,718 calories worth in one day. The body doesn't like that transition, especially at that volume. And the information that followed wasn't random. It was specific, measurable response. The gut lining is thinner than you think, 1 cell thick in most places. When you flood it with large quantities of sugar, refined carbs, processed additives after a period of eating clean, 2 things happen. The gut bacteria that had been diversifying, rebalancing towards the strains that prefer fibre and real food, well, they get suddenly hit with a different substrate, and the gut barrier itself, which has been reducing permeability, gets stressed. Inflammation shows up in fingers before it shows up on a blood test. Swelling in the small joints is one of the earlier visible signs of systematic inflammatory response. It's not dangerous, but it's a signal. And it's a signal I'd never noticed before 10 weeks because this was my normal. So what actually happened? I should say up front, I'm not telling this story as a cautionary tale. I'm not telling you Christmas food is evil. I'm telling you it because what my body did was data, and data's useful. This is the food log. I'm going to read it out because it needs to land properly. Roast beef, roast potatoes, Yorkshire pudding, roast veg. Fine, normal Christmas dinner there. And then this is where it gets interesting. Chocolate digestives, mince pies, Christmas pudding with cream, trifle. Total calories, 3,718. Total plants, 20, which is actually good. The roast veg really helped. Total sugar, 154 grams. 154 grams of sugar. That's around 38 teaspoons. I want to be clear, I didn't feel bad during it. That's the bliss point mechanism working exactly as designed. I felt fine, enjoyed it. Normal Christmas, went to bed, no drama. I woke up, my fingers were properly swollen, both hands. I noticed it. Putting my phone down, the joints felt stiff, slightly puffy. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Brain fog, 6.5 out of 10. Now I track this every morning, so I've got a baseline. Typical morning for me over that 10 weeks, 7.5 to 9 out of 10. That morning, 6.5. That's a difference. The 6.5 is when conversations feel like work, when you're reaching for words that should be immediate, when someone asks you something and there's a half-second delay that really shouldn't be there. Energy, 6 out of 10. Again, my baseline by then was a good 8, 9 some days. So this was a noticeable drop. And this is the one that surprised me the most. My head was hunting for food from the moment I woke up. Not hunger exactly, more like craving. That specific feeling of wanting something, even though I'm not empty. I hadn't been there for weeks. It turned up within 12 hours of a high UPF day, which is, well, that's the bliss point mechanism again. Once the signal fires, it keeps firing. 10 weeks prior to this, that's day 69, would have been a normal Saturday. I'd have eaten like that, felt slightly sluggish the next morning, called it a hangover without the alcohol, moved on. Nothing noticeable. No swelling I'd have recognised as swelling, no fog I'd have thought to measure. This time, my body responded like I'd changed the rules on it. Because I had. The reaction wasn't dramatic. I want to be honest about that. I wasn't ill, I wasn't in pain, but it was clear. The contrast was impossible to miss. And here's what my own notes from that day say. I wrote this at 7 a.m. on day 70. Body screamed inflammation, something like withdrawal symptoms because I've changed at a cellular level. And that binge wasn't failure, it was proof. By 6 p.m. on day 70, I had eaten properly. Satiety soups, real ingredients, nothing processed. A short fast, and by evening the fog had lifted to probably an 8 out of 10. Mental clarity was back somewhat. That's not a long recovery time, it's actually quite quick. And the speed of recovery is itself data. It tells you the reset mechanism is working. The body knows how to return to baseline now. It's practiced at it. 10 weeks ago, I wouldn't have recovered in one evening because I wouldn't have had a clean baseline to return to. That recovery speed is probably the most encouraging thing in the whole story for me. Not the reaction, the speed of the bounce back. What does any of this really mean though practically? I'm not going to tell you never to eat Christmas dinner. That's not the point. It's not what I did. The point is having a framework for how you return and for noticing what your body actually does when you diverge from real food. Most people eat Christmas food, feel a bit rough and file it under holiday. They don't track it. They don't connect swollen fingers to yesterday's food choices. They don't notice the fog score. So the feedback loop never closes. Try this instead. Next time you have a high UPF day, Christmas dinner, birthday, weekend at someone else's house, rate yourself the following morning. Energy out of 10. Mental clarity out of 10. Any joint stiffness? Yes, no, write it down. 1 minute, do the same thing after a clean day. Compare them over 4 weeks. Not to punish yourself when the scores drop, but to build your own data set. Because your data, your specific data, is more useful than any general study, including the Kevin Hull one that I mentioned. Our position isn't 0 UPF forever. It's 80, 85, 90% real food. The 10, 15, 20% is a ceiling. It's not a target. The reason it works long term is it removes the binary. You're not failing if you eat a mince pie. You're operating within a system that allows for reality. What day 69 showed me is that I'd gone significantly past 10% for 48 hours. The body noticed. I noted it, filed it and reacted accordingly. And because I had a baseline, 10 weeks of mostly clean data, the reaction was measurable in a way it had never been before. If you've been eating a standard Western diet and want to notice what I noticed, give it 8 to 12 weeks. That's a realistic adaptation window, not 3 days. 8 to 12 weeks of mostly real food. Regular fasting, no UPF most of the time. Then go binge out, have a Christmas dinner, have a party food. See what your body says. Some people notice it faster, some people take longer. The shift is real, it just takes time to build the baseline that makes the contrast visible. If you're tracking fasting and food simultaneously and you're on any medication, especially blood pressure or diabetes medication, the fasting element needs GP sign-off first. Fasting changes how medication behaves in your system. If this video's got you thinking about tracking your own reactions, there's a food and energy log template I've put together. Tracks daily food, quality, energy, food score, any symptoms. The same format I used during the reset. The link is in the description, free download. One important thing before you go, everything in this video is educational content. It's not medical advice. If you're thinking about changing how you eat or starting fasting, particularly if you're on any medication, please speak to your GP first.